hello, everybody. Falling into um, a lot of conflict, and much of it is I understand it because the police are just they killed Jacob Blake, and there's protesting and riots in Milwaukee, and I understand that. I mean, I as much as a white guy can in this country, but I want everybody to understand how we've been so propagandized about war. So in the 70s, there was all these really good anti-war movies like The Deer Hunter. And this was brought by Sparky, a viewer of the show. The Deer Hunter was purposely made to not be 100% accurate, partly because accuracy is expensive, but also make it surreal, make it timeless. And I've talked a lot about this on this show before. In the 70s, there was a lot of anti-war movies, anti-Vietnam movies. There was Apocalypse Now. There was The Deer Hunter. And Full Metal Jacket, and these movies, didn't really glamorize war. Now you can make some critiques of them. They only depicted the Vietnamese in one way. They were just pajama terrorists or whatever, and that's a fair criticism of they did not show the Vietnamese view on this. Then they were all just terrorists or whatever. So there's that sort of white American view, but they do show to an American audience at that time in the 70s that had grown up watching John Wayne and all these American exceptionalist wars. And we're so propagandized to think that war. And now you've got Call of Duty, you've got other video games that you folks have brought up. And it's Call of Duty is war training. It's really special ops and all this stuff. It's really, you see how powerful the war training is. And they show these, like I watched a Call of Duty ad for a video game during a sporting event, because that's when they really show them, right next to like a Marine Corps training. And they look the same. And it's to tell people, hey, young people, war's fun, war's a game. And we're so dehumanized. I mean, we're so desensitized. That's the word I want. We're desensitized to what war is in this country. We have no clue, except the people that served in Iraq and Afghanistan. And that's why we have 22 vets a day that commit suicide. And I want to talk about why, and since the 90s and into the 2000s, but definitely since 9/11, there's been no movies that are critical of what we've done in Afghanistan or Iraq that I can think of. American Sniper, The Hurt Locker, those movies talked about PTSD and they covered those well, but they really were just like, look how great we are. There's no like, why are we spending all this money on these wars? We've been in Afghanistan for 19 years. Where's that movie? There's no documentaries getting made like that. There's nothing like that sneaking out. You couldn't make anything that didn't have some critique of the war in Vietnam and civil rights and women's rights. I mean, you couldn't just avoid those topics in the 70s as an artist. You just couldn't. As a musician, as you had to. Everybody was taking a stand. Muhammad Ali, everybody, man. You had musicians, you had to take a stand. And now you see how the American exceptionalism is paid, and all wars are awful. All wars are awful. And World War II, everybody's very glamorized. And yes, we were fighting Nazis. They were horrible. And we know what happened in the Holocaust and the concentration camps. It was awful. We know what Mussolini did. We know what the Japanese did. It was brutal. But even then, we don't really talk about how horrific it was for what we did in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We're the only country to ever detonate an atomic weapon. We don't talk about that. And you know what else we don't talk about? We don't talk about PTSD that the World War II vets had. Now, they didn't call it that back then. They said, oh, he's just shell-shocked. But there's a play called Hatful of Rain. And it's about a guy that's a World War II vet that's addicted to heroin. One of the reasons heroin exploded in the late 40s and 50s is because the field medicine they used in World War II, when somebody got injured, they gave them morphine, which is highly addictive. So all these guys rotated back from World War II, and many of them were morphine addicts because the war, it was so brutal there. They got this pump full of morphine. If they got stitched up, if you could still fight, you went back to the front. And so guys came back with heroin addictions. And that's when the heroin thing and then the jazz and all that went around. There was a culture around it, but like that, do we talk about that? Do we talk about the 22 vets a day today now that are committing suicide because of the PTSD they've suffered in Iraq and Afghanistan? Afghanistan, again, is a war we've been in for 19 years. We've spent anywhere from $5 to $9 trillion. We have not stopped terrorism. We haven't won. Imagine, I say this all the time. Imagine if we were still fighting in Europe in the year 1960. Think about that historically. Anyone who's alive was alive during that time. Think about that. It's the year 2020. The war on terror started after 9/11, 2001, September 2001. We were bombed at Pearl Harbor, December 1941. Imagine we're still fighting the Japanese and the Nazis. It's just this never ending. It's 1960. So there's no boom of the 50s. There's no economic explosion because we've spent all our money on war. We're still fighting. All that growth in the 50s and 60s, that never happened because we're still fighting the Axis. Isn't that sound insane? And the reason we're not, as a society, waking up to this is because they've propagandized all of us through Hollywood. All this American exceptionalism, no movies that call it. When The Deer Hunter came out, when Apocalypse Now came out, the end of Apocalypse Now, spoiler alert, they all throw down their weapons. That was Francis Ford Coppola's like, hey, this symbolic gesture, let's be done with war. Again, this is a spoiler alert. I'm giving you a spoiler alert. If you haven't watched The Deer Hunter, watch Apocalypse Now. The end of The Deer Hunter, he has a shot and he decides not to take it because he's done with war. All these movies, these artists were trying to say this is bad. Now we just got corporate propagandists. And, you try to make a movie like that's anti-war, they won't buy it. They're not going to, the big studios, Warner Brothers, Sony, they're not going to buy it. Netflix isn't going to buy it. HBO, that's not going to happen. You can make a movie saying that Russia's bad and blame everything on Russia. So we've been desensitized to war. And now everybody thinks, younger people, and hey, everyone's talking revolution and all this stuff. And, I don't know. It might need to happen, but I hope everybody understands that this ain't Call of Duty. You're not some first-person shooter game and then lock and load. And it's brutal. It's going to be brutal. These protests in the street and what's happening, it's brutal. But this is nothing. This looks like this is a Disney parade compared to what could and might happen. So just realize how much we've all been propagandized to think that Russia's bad and everything, war's great, and America's always on the good side of things. No movies about the $21 trillion that just disappeared from the Pentagon. No movies about the 90% civilian casualties by the drone strikes, primarily by Obama and Biden. You remember them? They dropped more bombs than Bush. 90% of their casualties were unintended targets, meaning civilians. They only killed 10% of the people they wanted to. 90% of the other people they killed, civilians, so what? Somebody's dad, somebody's uncle, somebody's mom, somebody's kid, somebody's wife, husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. Sorry, that's America. No one's talking about that. No one's talking about it. These two ridiculous conventions we're having to watch. The Democratic convention, which ran a bunch of Republicans, and then the Republican convention, which just ran fascist wingnuts. Like, close your eyes during the Democratic convention and you'll hear a Republican convention from the 80s or 90s. And it's just amazing. So stop being lied to. Boom. Hey everyone, great ways to support the show are go to patreon.com/Graham Elwood, where you get bonus content for as little as $2 a month, or rockfin.com/Graham Elwood, a blockchain cryptocurrency platform. That's the future. Also, GrahamElwood.com, where all my merchandise is on sale and ships exclusively with the United States Post Office. Like my Vigilante Volume 2, The Dark Knight. We only made 50 of them. They're going fast. Go to GrahamElwood.com to support the show. I'm on Venmo and PayPal, P.O. Box, all of that, GrahamElwood.com.